and welcome to Commander Aspie. In my first video, something I mentioned was very important to me personally was my special interests. Something that for a lot of autistic people can be very close to our hearts and very important to us. So today I thought that's what I would talk about. What special interests maybe are, how they might differ from just a normal interest, and why they're important, as well as a few of my own, what mine are, like to get to know me a little bit better. So here we go. What are special interests? Well, this can be a little tricky to exactly define because obviously every autistic person is different and is therefore likely to have a different experience of their special interests, and also not every autistic person experiences the same symptoms of autism. You might not feel like you experience a special interest in the way that and a lot of other autistic people say they do, but that is totally fine. But it is a common trait within autism to have special interests. I think it comes from the autistic ability to become very interested and attached to things, and the autistic desire sometimes to learn a lot about something, to kind of gather information, to research more than maybe a neurotypical person might. So special interests are simply things that autistic people are interested in, but it kind of goes beyond just being interested into being extremely interested and extremely involved. Someone who has a special interest might spend a lot more time on their interests than they may be expected to. They may do a lot of research into their special interest. They are likely to know a lot about their special interest. And really, it is almost something that we take into ourselves, that becomes a part of us. And for a lot of people, it is a very big part of their life. It's something that they're extremely attached to. And if they weren't able to participate in their special interest, it would probably be highly stressful for them, upsetting. So special interests are very important for a lot of us. So, how do special interests maybe differ from the interests of a neurotypical person? Why are they seen as a specific trait of autism? Don't we all have interests? Well, special interests are perhaps a little bit different in a few different ways. One part of that, as I've mentioned, is intensity. Special interests, as I've said, are something that the autistic person probably cares an awful lot about, is highly invested in. It's not just something they're interested in, it is a massive part of their life. And in that way, it kind of differs because there is the ability within autism to become highly attached, and the experience may be a little bit different. Whereas a neurotypical person might just watch and enjoy a show, a autistic person might have a favourite show that they know all about. They know the birth dates of all of the actors in it. They might know certain statistics about the production of the show. They might know a lot of background information around the history of the show. So you can see how this maybe differs a little bit from a lot of people's experiences with their hobbies. It is also something that can be very specific. Now, this isn't obviously a requirement, but for a lot of autistic people, their special interests can be highly focused. It's maybe not just that they like a genre of books, but they have a book that they know everything about. Or it might be something that maybe is a little unusual. Now, this is where we get into some tricky misconceptions, as we often do with autism, because unfortunately we live in a world that likes to not fully understand autism. So, and special interests are one of those areas. And where this comes from, I believe, is the faults in some of the earlier research around special interests and around autism in general. So, as you may or may not be aware, a lot of the earlier research on autism was highly focused, if not entirely focused, on male autism or masculine autism. Now we will get into some binary gender thinking here. I am non-binary, so I find this sometimes a little bit tricky, but there has been observations of distinct differences sometimes between typical male autism and typical female autism. So, and one of these lies in special interests. This is where we get the misconception that some things can be special interests and some things can't. Typically, the special interests of males on the spectrum have been observed to be quite unusual, not really appropriate for their age group in one way or another, and often highly kind of academic or engineering based in lots of ways, or just typically nerdy or unusual, you could say. So this might be the Sheldon Cooper train obsession, or a high talent for maths, or liking very specific breeds of bugs. It could be anything in that regard. Whereas it has been observed in the past that a lot of girls also tend to have interests that are maybe not seen as unusual and maybe more age appropriate, meaning that once again girls fly under the radar of diagnosis. Yay, not. So this might be an interest in a animation for their age group that is popular with their peers, or makeup, not to be stereotypical, because anyone can enjoy makeup. But it has been observed that there do tend to be these differences. Now, this obviously isn't rigid, because I have special interests that you could say are more typical, and I have full-on nerdy specific ones, as you will find out later. But it has caused problems in the way that the special interests of specifically feminine people or girls on the spectrum are perceived, because they're seen as not valid special interests, where we know that the nature of the special interest isn't about what the special interest is, it's about how we experience the interest, because that is what distinguishes it from maybe a neurotypical person's experience of their hobbies. A neurotypical person can be interested in something that is stereotypically an autism special interest. They can like sci-fi, they can like things that move very fast, like trains, they can be interested in engineering. But that doesn't make it a special interest. What makes it a special interest is the intensity and the importance of the interest. So obviously this is complete nonsense. So I just wanted to bring that up quickly. And as I mentioned just there, a big defining aspect of special interest is the importance of the interest. So what do I mean here? Obviously, it's the value that the autistic person places on the interest, but another often big part of special interest is the ways in which they can help autistic people. And what I mean by that is that special interests are almost a coping skill of their own. So we are autistic people in a quite unpredictable world, and often quite chaotic world that unfortunately wasn't necessarily designed with us in mind. And it can be very overwhelming living as an autistic person in a neurotypical world. So, where does special interest come into this? Well, part of what can be so overwhelming about living in our society as an autistic person is the unpredictableness of it, the fact that we don't know what's going to happen, the fact that people and situations can just be so hard to understand. So a big part of possibly coping with that for a lot of people can be their special interests, having their subject which they know inside out, having something that is absolutely familiar to them. Like, there's nothing that could shock them in their special interest, and being able to just indulge in that. For a lot of people, this can be fantasy worlds potentially, or it can just be finding comfort in a familiar activity or information. So that could be Lego, like it has been for me in the past, or just doing research on, for example, trains. I keep going back to trains. I also love trains. Or, as I said, it could be a fantasy world. For me, that is often Star Trek. Just being able to lose yourself in it. Possibly, if you've had a really overwhelming day, reground yourself and find that comfort. In the past, when I've just had a meltdown, one thing that my mum has done is put Lilo and Stitch on for me, because she knows that's a special interest and it's something that will comfort me and calm me. And it's just something that you can always fall back on. So this is one reason why I think it is awfully harmful when adults try and pull children away from their special interests. Don't do that. And I guess another reason that special interests can be incredibly beneficial is, like a lot of other autistic people, I can sometimes struggle in social situations, finding ways to initiate conversations, how to get started, putting myself in there, making new friends. And for a lot of people, special interests can actually be a really big help in this, because a lot of special interests, if not all, have social opportunities. So if you are maybe struggling with finding new friends, you can go to a situation, maybe an event, a convention, a D&D game set up, and you can find people who have the same special interest as you, or just general interest. It could be neurotypical people, it could be neurodiverse people, but you all have something in common already. You all have something you can talk about, you have somewhere to start. The situation isn't totally unfamiliar to you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you can kind of rely on the fact that you're there doing something you love. And it can just be an extra comfort in uncomfortable situations. And also, a big one is, and I think this is often one that people forget, special interests can lead to jobs. Believe it or not, it can. So, especially as we get into adulthood, our special interests can actually lead us into our future. Say you are interested in a fantasy show, you can start practicing maybe writing your own sci-fi scripts. If you are interested in a cartoon, that might lead you to experiment with animation. If you are interested in engineering, well, you can become an engineer. And the special interest aspect of possibly knowing an awful lot about this and having put a lot of time into this only helps in this regard. Who wouldn't want to maybe collaborate with the person who's watched hours of Disney animations and knows a lot about the animation world? Who wouldn't want to talk to someone who knows exactly how several models of trucks work in the regard to engineering? You know, it is a great benefit in some ways. And I think it's also is just lovely that we can experience these interests on this level. It's just a beautiful thing to be able to become so impassioned by something. And I think special interests are just another way in which we should be proud of our autism and our autistic traits. Who doesn't want to become totally loving towards something? Who doesn't want to become an absolute fan of something? It's passion, and passion is one of the most beautiful human emotions. So go autism. As promised, I will now share with you some of my special interests as a way to maybe get to know each other more and also just explore how awesome this topic is. So I thought I would start with a couple of the special interests that have been with me since basically day one and have come all through my life with me and are still with me today. So first, because it's probably the earliest special interest I had, it's this guy, Winnie the Pooh. And of course, when I came to India, I had to buy a new Winnie the Pooh because I needed a Pooh Bear to sleep with. So, this is one, obviously, well, not obviously, but it is one all the way from my childhood. It's one that my parents introduced me to, thank you. And it is one that has stood the test of time, you could say. So, Winnie the Pooh is a great comfort to me. It is one of those ones, again, like Lilo and Stitch and a lot of other Disney films, that is just pure, innocent, and can always make me feel better. It's also one with a fascinating history, as it started as a book post World War One, and then has gone through many animation stages within Disney and outside of Disney in its early history, and it's also fascinating to study. I have books, I have basically all of the Disney films on DVD, I think now. I have plushies, and I've actually met Jim Cummings, who voices Tigger and Winnie the Pooh, and I got to have a photo of him with my personal Tigger from when I was about 2 or 3 years old, so that was pretty cool, and he did the Tigger voice for me, and I almost cried. So yeah, I absolutely love Winnie the Pooh and always will. I'm going to put him down safely. So, another one, and this one, again, Winnie the Pooh could be seen as age inappropriate for me. This one is probably age inappropriate, but in the other direction. So, the other one that has definitely stood the test of time is, of course, this dude, Elton John. Yeah, I'm a cool kid. So, why do I love this beautiful man? Well, it all started, you could say, around about, I'd say, 17 years ago. You won't believe me, but let me explain. I have been an Elton John fan since I was around 4 years old, and it all started with the Bob the Builder, A Christmas to Remember Christmas special. And in this film, Elton John is in a band with Chris Evans, who is not the Captain America Chris Evans, but ginger British Chris Evans. And a piece of machinery, technically, sorry Rolly, called Rolly, helped him write Crocodile Rock. And it all started there, and ever since I have been a massive fan of this man's life story, his songs. I've seen Rocket Man several times now and own it on DVD. I have the soundtrack of the film also on my phone, and I'm actually going to see him live in November, and I am absolutely ecstatic for that. You have no idea. So yeah, and this is one, again, I guess it's a comfort whenever I listen to his music, but I just love it. I have driven my mum mad with Elton John songs, and I will not stop. I will also not stop singing Elton John to myself. Sorry to any future neighbours, you will have to put up with that. So those are probably the biggest two that have stood the test of time. I guess you could also say Jacqueline Wilson. I do still read Jacqueline Wilson. Do I care that it's written for children? Nope. And again, Lilo and Stitch, Disney is obviously a big one for me. So now I thought I would talk about two of probably the biggest ones for me that are maybe a bit more recent, but still as important and will probably, again, stand the test of time. Obviously, a good one to start with would probably be my degree topic, and that would be Tibetan. Again, another very unusual specific one. I don't know anyone who hasn't given me weird looks when I mention what my degree is. So, obviously I study Tibetan. I'm currently on my year abroad. And Tibetan, again, started in quite a weird way. I was learning about the history between Tibet and China, learned how endangered the language was, saw how beautiful it was, and went, I'm going to study that, and fell in love with it. I do love languages, even though I am actually dyslexic, and they can be a bit of a challenge. I do just love learning them, and I am now obsessed with everything Tibetan. History, imperial history is one of my favourite topics, language, culture, food, momos for life. If you've never had a momo, you're missing out. And yeah, it is my passion. And talking of languages, another language I am currently learning is Klingon. If you know what Klingon is, you're hopefully a Trekkie and will totally agree with me on this next point, because my other big special interest at the moment is, of course, Star Trek. as you can tell from my title of my channel and also my first video. It is a big one for me. I am actually at the moment, I did make a scrapbook for my Winnie the Pooh obsession when I was about 18. I have started the same with Star Trek. So this is just a book I've started filling with stats about the first 2 seasons. I do really love collecting information about my special interests. I do love a good fact. I now know that out of any character in the Star Trek franchise, the character with the most on-screen time is actually Worf, with 282 on-screen appearances. And I just absolutely love it. I think for me it also has a very strong connection to some very important friends of mine and a sense of safety and family. But I don't think that's the only reason I love it. I also probably love it for the same reason that I loved original Doctor Who. It is kitschy and cheesy and full of terrible alien costumes, and who doesn't love that? This one definitely does. So, and it is a very big part of my life. I couldn't watch Star Trek yesterday because I didn't have data, and I very much struggled. And I do Klingon every day, and I actually, if you can see, have a Star Trek tattoo, which says live long and prosper in Vulcan, of course. And yeah, it just is something I absolutely adore. And I love learning more about it. I guess that's also where I would say that it's a special interest, because it's not only I want to watch it, I want to know everything about it. I want to learn languages, I want to gather information. And a big part of me will always be a collector of both information and things. And that links me to the next topic, which I quickly wanted to brush on, is collectibles. So I will not speak for every autistic person, of course, but I have heard a lot of autistic people agree with me on this. A lot of us love collecting, and I am definitely one of those people. If there was a collectible card when I was growing up, I was on it. I had match tags, I had Doctor Who trading cards. I was also a big fan of the sticker albums for new films. I had a lot of them, didn't necessarily finish them, but I had them. And any sort of little collectible toy as well. I had the Go-Go's, which I really loved, like little monsters you could battle with, but there were like lots of different designs, and you got them in like blind bags. Blind bags are also great. When I was stressed in my second year of uni, whenever I could, as a little treat, I'd get myself a little blind bag. And I guess also Lego kind of fits into this one, which is another big special interest for me. Kind of collecting sets, being able to look what's new. Obviously Lego's a bit more expensive, so I couldn't do it as often. But it is another, I guess, aspect of collecting, especially the brickheads. That was a big one for me. I probably have over about 20 or 30 brickheads now. I'm hoping they're not all broken in the box back at my house. So yeah, I am a bit of an obsessive person with many special interests, because you don't just have to have one special interest. I'm gonna catch them all. So, do you have any special interests? I would actually really love to hear about your special interests in the comments, because I know quite often it can be tricky. Sometimes neurotypical people don't always understand when we kind of go on impassioned rambles about our special interests. So I think it's great to listen to each other and really show enthusiasm for each other's special interests. And I do hope that if you are a neurotypical person watching this, now you maybe understand a bit better why special interests are so important to us, and what exactly differentiates a special interest from just liking something, and why we might try and talk your ear off for ages about them. And on the topic of special interests, I was wondering, please let me know if you would like a video on Star Trek and autism. Obviously, as we've seen in Big Bang and in general, Mr. Spock tends to be a character often linked with autism, and I actually have found myself relating quite a lot to Commander Data in Next Generation, and I would really like to maybe talk about why this might be, whether I think that it's a good thing to put these labels on these characters, whether I think that they do show autistic traits, and in general, their relationship with autism. So if you'd like to see that, please let me know. I would love to make it. And I will see you soon. Bye for now. Live long and prosper.